Story 1. About 2 months ago, I worked for an absolute tyrant of an administrator. This guy was awful bad enough that I feel like a 48-year-old teacher venting about him, wishing I had the unshakable confidence of some internet-famous tough guy. But I digress. Before working at this school, I had spent the previous 18 years teaching 8th grade math, 4th grade math, or serving as an academic coach. I switched schools primarily due to location. I found one on the other side of the mountain I stare at every night and figured it would be a good fit. Nope. This administrator, we'll call him Pop and Fresh, shut me down at every turn. I started at the school in the middle of the academic year, dealing with some very challenging students. On my first day, the academic coach for both the school and the district trained us on a versatile gaming-based learning tool that could be used for math, language arts, or any other subject. It was called Gimkit. Now, I fully understand that Gimkit isn't a substitute for actual education. It's simply a 5-minute tool to assess whether students understand the content, and it engages them effectively. On my first day with students, I immediately saw how rough their behavior was. They had already driven 2 teachers out of the school. I knew it would take some patience and strategy to get them to listen to me, so I introduced them to Gimkit. They had barely opened their Chromebooks maybe 30 seconds in when Pop and Fresh burst into the room and shut it down immediately. He never assessed the situation. He just saw students doing something that looked informal and instantly decided it wasn't educational. He literally popped into the classroom, bouncing around like he was full of nervous energy. This kind of thing happened constantly. I would be in the middle of a lesson, walking around to help students, when he would appear out of nowhere and tell me to change something. It was like clockwork. Every program, strategy, or center-based activity I tried to implement to motivate my 7th graders was shut down instantly. Eventually, he made his philosophy clear. Teach only what's on the tests, nothing more. All right then. I took that as my cue to go all in on this bare bones, test-focused approach, adding a side of, I can't believe I'm actually doing this, for good measure. I stuck to the book 100%. Whenever a student asked, why do we do it this way? While working on surface area and volume, my response was simple. That's not on the test. Whenever I felt the natural urge to make a connection to other standards, I stopped myself. Not on the test. Over time, students grew frustrated. They yawned through lessons, disengaged, and clearly weren't enjoying the process. It pained me to see them like this, so I decided to reserve my robotic, test-focused approach for the moments when Pop and Fresh decided to drop in. One day, he walked in with his boss's boss, and a few other unfamiliar faces. The moment I saw them, I switched gears, ditching any deep thinking, real-world applications, or hands-on activities in favor of exactly what he had been demanding, teaching only what was on the test. I instantly transformed into a monotone, lifeless instructor, channeling the famously dull economics teacher from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The students groaned immediately. Mr. Up, I hate when you teach like this. More complaints poured in from all around the room. This is the worst part of my day. I used to like math, but now I don't, thanks to this. And plenty more, some of which were far too colorful to repeat. At that moment, Pop and Fresh doubled down on his usual nonsense, clearly putting on a performance for his superiors. These kids seem highly unmotivated. Up. We need to have a meeting about this if you can't get them engaged. I decided it was time to call him out. You told me to teach only what's on the test, so that's exactly what I'm doing. If they want to know why something happens, or how to solve a problem a different way, that's not on the test, right? You told me just to be up and be teaching, and never let them use their Chromebooks, correct? I made sure to say this within earshot of his entire entourage because I had a strong feeling these were the higher-ups, the ones who had approved the significant budget to make our school a true one-to-one learning environment, where every student had a Chromebook. And if that was the case, I knew the district would want students to use them effectively. His response was weak. I only stopped you from using the Chromebooks because the kids were just playing games. The students immediately jumped in. It's a math game. That caught the attention of the head administrator. Well, let's see what this math game is all about. I had the students get their Chromebooks, and they excitedly logged in. I pulled up a surface area and volume-based Gimkit game, and the room came alive. They were fully engaged, solving problems in their notebooks to gain ammunition in the game. It was active. It was fun. It was exactly what education should be. Pop and Fresh had no response. By the end of the day, I received an email from the head administrator himself, asking to discuss Pop and Fresh and how things had been going. I was honest. I told him about the intimidation, the threats, and the way he had covered up serious issues. Those details are a whole other story, but they aren't directly related to what happened here. The investigation is still ongoing even 2 months later, as I now teach at a new school on the other side of that proverbial mountain. As for Pop and Fresh, well, he's under investigation for his behavior not just toward me, but toward other new teachers as well. And this time, the issue is making its way up the chain. Story 2. I'm stretching the parent part of this sub to cover fur babies. As we are childless at the moment, our dog is sort of our practice child. So entitled Pet Parents Story Incoming. Backstory: my dog, Stormy, a 4-year-old female pit bull, black lab, chow chow, Australian shepherd mutt mix, is a very good girl. She loves other dogs, people, children, etc. She's well known in our small subdivision, and many of our neighbors with dogs will bring their dog up to the fence/deck railing to let their dog say hello through the fence, which is okay. We hired a dog walker, Nell, to come take Stormy for walks Monday to Friday while we're working. Stormy gets a 15-25 minute walk with Nell, and Nell is an absolute professional. Nell does have a contract and rules though. Nell's time with our dog is dedicated to getting her walked and letting her go potty, cleaning up after her, and then Nell needs to be off to the next customer. Nell does not let our dog interact with other dogs during their time together, because she doesn't know whose dog is a jerk or angel, vaccinated, or the temperament training style of their owners. She also has liability insurance that talks about not taking risks with other dogs. So when she comes across someone who wants to say hi, she says, "Hey, I'm really sorry, we can't stay and hang out due to liability and time." Usually, that's the end of it and people respect her request, except last week with 2 of my entitled pet parent neighbors. Cast: Nell, our good dog walker; Stormy, my goodest girl dog; Karen, entitled pet parent #1 who does not have my cell phone number; and Tabitha, entitled pet parent #2 who does have my cell phone number. Karen is an older lady who kind of rubs several of the neighbors wrong by not cleaning up after her dog's waste, and also doing things like cutting other people's shrubs down like 6 houses away. I've always gotten more strange vibes from her. I avoid in-depth conversations and just keep my hellos brief. Tabitha is nice to me, but I've always had this lady might have issues or be entitled vibe from her. I've always kept my contact with most of the neighbors pretty brief in general, because having neighbors you don't like, I've heard, can be quite stressful. Tabitha bothers my husband though. She's very pushy, like, "Oh, my dog wants to play, so I'm going to let my dog into your fenced yard for a few minutes." Husband: "No, sorry, we don't have time, I've got to get back to work." Followed by an insane amount of pouting, arguing and complaining from Tabitha. This is Nell and my story from last Wednesday with 2 entitled dog parents. Nell was taking Stormy for a walk, and Karen snuck up behind her with her dog. Good dog, much older, somewhat indifferent to people or dogs, but good dog all the same. Nell has previously asked Karen to keep her distance, so when Karen snuck up behind her, it felt very intentional and disrespectful. Nell said her usually, no, we can't hang out, liability and time." Karen argued with her and said, "I said it was fine, so it's fine." Nell tells me that she was almost back at our house, but felt compelled to turn around and quickly leave going the opposite direction. No big deal, Stormy just gets a double walk, and Nell avoids an awkward confrontation any further. Nell hasn't gotten very far, and is walking past another neighbor's Tabitha's house. Tabitha says, "Oh, is that Stormy?" And Nell says yes, thinking the lady wants to pet Stormy, which is okay. And Tabitha says, "Oh great, hold on for a moment." So Nell waits, thinking Tabitha might want to give Stormy a treat. Also okay, but no, Tabitha wants to get her dog, another good girl, out of the house and let Stormy and her dog play. Nell says, "Hey, sorry, don't really have time," and liability insurance says no other doggy visits. Tabitha loses her mind and starts screaming at Nell, "How dare you? I'm going to report you," amongst other things. I'm at work while all this is going down and completely unaware until I get a text message from Tabitha saying, "Your dog walker was so rude. She wouldn't even let my dog say hi to Stormy. When both dogs wanted to do it, she wouldn't even stop and talk to me, telling me she has to get going." I explained to Tabitha that it was by design and per the contract for safety and liability reasons, as Nell doesn't know whose dog is a jerk or an angel, and Nell has a schedule of other customers, and Nell was really nice and professional. I would absolutely recommend her. Tabitha argued with me some more about how Nell should have tried to get her business then, and even said we should fire our dog walker and she'll walk Stormy for free. I just wished her a nice day and left it alone with Tabitha. I sent Nell a text message shortly after. "Heard about the thing with my neighbor. I respect and appreciate your policy on no doggy greetings. I understand you have safety concerns and time limits, and I explained those to Tabitha. I hope you weren't uncomfortable." Nell proceeded to call me and tell me about Karen and Tabitha's interactions. What a day for our poor dog walker, but thankfully she's got tough skin, and our support and appreciation of course. I reinforced that we agree with her policies, respect her time, and to let us know if she needed any further support from us. Story 3. Hi. So I, 35, female, have this childhood entitled friend, 35, female, that always reconnects with me even if I go and see. Can't get rid of her, so at least I have stories now. She is jobless and lives with her parents. She went to uni for 5 years, some sociology stuff. She then decided she hates that line of work and went to study a 6-month course, some TV stuff. A lot of students landed entry-level jobs on TV. She didn't. I wonder why, because these jobs were pretty much guaranteed after that. Maybe it had something to do with her being constantly late and sleeping in instead of being in class. Maybe not. As this friend was still very interested in TV stuff, she then went to another uni for another 4 years for that. Parents paid for everything, of course. Oh, I will add that we live in Eastern Europe. She was still jobless at 25 plus. But when I suggested for her to land a job as a night hotel administrator, she was adamant she needs to work on TV. It's her passion, and she will be extremely unhappy anywhere else. Years later, in 2019, no TV job yet. She was saying that people get their jobs through friends and relatives. Her friends for some reason never provided good jobs, only some odd ones here and there. It was so strange and unfair. She was a great friend, and they weren't giving back the same energy. I guess I only contributed to that idea by finding a job I really loved through my friend, working alongside her and being quite happy. She started hinting a lot, then said it outright. "Do you guys have a job for me there?" "I'm sorry, from what I gather, you have a very different training. We have nothing like that." "Oh my God, like it's so hard to do what you do. 2 weeks and anyone can figure it out. You need to be an idiot not to get something that easy." Yeah. As you can guess, even if we had a job for a zero-experienced person. Heck no, she would only embarrass me, won't show up to work, for example. She continues to pester me, especially when she hears funny office stories or sees photos on Facebook. I give up and tell her that we have a way in, call our office and send a portfolio. Because of the TV stuff, she had some photo skills and a small portfolio, and we sometimes hired photographers for odd jobs. Also, we sometimes hired freelance agents and sales personnel. No, she did not want that either. She never sends resumes or anything but continues to pester me to find her a permanent position like mine. We had 0 openings as that was a smallish firm with less than 20 people and already had a team of 5 for my line of work. But she completely ignored anything I was saying. Argued that I don't know her. I knew she can't write a line without 5 spelling errors, even with a spell checker. And I'm not mean, she's just more of a visual person. Okay, I will send you requirements for my position. I sent her all the details. She called me, very confused, and couldn't even properly read half of it. Proceeded to call HTML SMTH like kitty tail, she couldn't read it, and when I said it repeated as in a game of broken phone etc. Probably not that stupid, she had really different training. After that she finally was off my back about me not providing her a job at our company. Last year she started saying that my brother got a great job. She wanted the same and was considering asking her parents for money to study that. Now I was confused. My brother went to a 2 weeks free training in the company he wanted. They taught how to work with this specific software, and he succeeded and landed a job. Though I was very interested in why on earth she thought she could do this, if even HTML sounded so unfamiliar to her, I explained everything he did. Oh, that was so easy. Yes. Go for it. There's always an opening. I mean, you had to show up every day and not 3-4 hours late. Pass this training. Do well for 2-3 months until they deem you worthy of a permanent position, and you're set. Plus, they work nights. Probably she can even manage to show up. Wow, okay, I will surely do that. You know, when I'm feeling better, and get this stuff with my personal life resolved. And get my English at the same level as you and your brother, because I've never used it since school. 20 years. Okay, best of luck. Story 4. So from the top. My boyfriend goes out to smoke in a field just behind our house. He likes some privacy, and so he found himself a small canopy in the trees to sit in. He's been going there once or twice a day for just over a month now, give or take. And some kids took interest in his mysteriousness. For a little context, my boyfriend has long blonde hair, dresses in all black, and often wears a long trench coat. Yeah, kids could find him a little scary. Over time, they gather the confidence to start shouting abuse at him through the trees. They think he can't hear them as he tries his best not to react whatsoever. Plus, he puts in earbuds to try and block them out. The kind of nonsense they're saying to him is abusive and, before they knew he was white, borderline racist. He didn't want to tell me exactly what they said. So time goes by, every so often they disturb his private time, hurling abuse, and at this point he hasn't mentioned it to me or my dad, who we live with, yet. That is until they follow him home. The entitled kids decide one day when he emerges from the bushes, keeping to himself and continuing as always to ignore them, to follow him down the path home. He turns a corner to come into the gate to the back garden, and after about 5 minutes, we can see these kids looking around confused out the front of our house. My dad goes out there and asks them what's up, and it went roughly as follows. Dad, what are you kids doing out here? Entitled kid, have you seen a guy here with long blonde hair? Yeah, he lives here. Oh well, we keep seeing him going into the bushes and we think he's doing drugs. Well, he's my son, and he's not doing anything wrong out there. No idea why Dad said that my boyfriend was his son, but hey ho. Other entitled kid, he scared me so much, that was so scary. There's nothing to be worried about, he's perfectly nice. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and I are cracking up in the other room. This would be the last time this was a laughing matter. The kids continue to taunt him in the bushes for about another week, and today, the parents got involved. My boyfriend and I left to go to our weekly D&D game, and when we got home, Dad had some news for us. Sometime in the evening, 2 big blokes come and knock on the door. One stays on the path, the other gets real close and personal to my dad. And my dad's a little guy. This was quite intimidating. And recounted from my dad's perspective, this is about what happened. Entitled parent, is your son home? Dad, no. Why? I want to speak to him. Is he not here? No, he's not here. You can come in here and check if you want to, but he's out at the moment. Well, he's been scaring my daughter, going about and wearing a mask, scaring all the kids in the field. Oh, well, I'll speak to him, but I'm sure he didn't mean to scare anyone. Some other things were said. I can't remember all Dad told us, but that covers the important stuff. My dad was super uncomfortable with this encounter, but thankfully we really weren't home. This parent was super confrontational and seemed like he was looking for a fight. If my boyfriend encounters him out and about another day, I'm genuinely worried for him. I'm not sure how my dad managed to de-escalate the situation, but the guy ended up leaving, though I doubt this is over. What really happened? I expect one of the older kids started feeding spooky stories to the younger, more impressionable ones, and then used my boyfriend as the scary figure just to make it that bit more real. Now that scared kid has gone and told her dad, and now we have a pissed-off parent on our hands. My boyfriend did one of the things he's being accused of. He literally did everything to ignore them, not a word, not even a glance when they spoke to him, avoiding them as much as possible, and yet they still managed to cause trouble. What pisses me off the most is that now those kids are probably going to get away with their disgusting behavior and flat-out lies. What scares me the most is if this escalates and our home becomes a neighborhood target when we did nothing wrong. My dad has invested so much time into this house. I'd hate for something to happen that might make him leave. Plus, we are moving soon. I don't want to leave him alone having to deal with stupid kids and angry parents. That and this entitled parent coming and fighting my boyfriend. Our next move is that my boyfriend has had to abandon his spot. If we see the kids, ignore them, despite that being what he's done already. And if we encounter the parents, tell the truth. He's never tried to intimidate them or scare them, nor has he ever spoken a word to them, but also apologize. This just feels stupidly unfair though. I hate how they're getting away with this because they're just kids blah blah. Edit. So I went to bed and wow. Thanks for all the support. We don't really want to get the police involved, at least not yet, despite the harassment and intimidation. We are hoping that it will be over and involving the police will escalate the situation. However, if the parents do come to our home again, I don't think we will be answering the door and instead calling the police, especially if they seem hostile. My boyfriend won't be returning to the woods anymore. We do have a really nice garden, so he's happy to smoke there too, though the kids have come unprovoked to the house as well. But as you all have said, any further incidents, and if anyone gets near the house, I will be recording on the off chance the other parents decide to take it to the next level. Update. So since the incident, my boyfriend has absolutely avoided that field and the bush he used to sit in to smoke. Instead, he smokes in our garden without any problems. Today, however, as he was smoking outside, my dad was out, and I was watching Hell's Kitchen. I hear a very aggressive knock on the door. Thanks to all the advice from last time, the first thing I do is grab my phone ready to record, and armed with it go to the door. This guy is big, not that tall, shorter than my boyfriend, but a big dude, covered in tattoos. I can see why he shook up my dad. To summarize what was a fairly long conversation, it went like this. He told me that my boyfriend had been scaring the kids again since he came over. I told him he absolutely hadn't been or done any of the things that he was accusing him of. He said that he was seen out recently by a friend who lives opposite the field he used to go to. I tell him he hasn't been out since his last visit. He didn't believe me. Said his daughter would never lie to him. Said that he had been out there today scaring the kids. I told him he couldn't have been as he's been home with me all day. He hadn't left the house. My boyfriend comes in with a half-burnt cig to speak to him. I stay in the doorway. The guy made it clear that he had no issue with me and didn't want to hurt me at all, so I didn't feel any danger. I'm a pretty short girl, and I was wearing matching bee-pattern pajamas. I did not look particularly threatening, so I expect that by answering the door I de-escalated the situation a bit. He essentially explains that he's done nothing he's being accused of, and tells the guy about the other kids that were hurling abuse at him from the bushes. How scared could they possibly be to do this? The guy seems to recognize the kids he describes. My boyfriend puts out a few convincing arguments as to why he wouldn't be antagonizing the children, and the guy leaves. The conversation ends on either this has been a huge misunderstanding and a bunch of little nonsense, or there's someone else that the kids are confusing him for. Most likely that they're a bunch of liars, and hopefully the situation has been resolved. He seemed a lot calmer when he left and could see that my boyfriend is a nice guy. I can't say I'm not a little worried, so I do want to file a report just in case the parent decides to take the word of his 7-year-old kid over an adult. Boyfriend is pretty confident that the encounter is over, but has let me report it, which I will do soon. Story 5. This happened a long time ago, somewhere around 2012 to 2013. Had a good friend who I smoked cigars with, and he had a friend named Jim. I didn't see Jim very often because we lived in different cities, but every time I visited, we would smoke cigars in the park. Well, near the park. Jim was probably about the smartest guy that I've ever met, and if I met Einstein, it might be eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Well, almost. We called him Subsection 6 because he was always finding loopholes for absolutely everything. He's the kind of guy that would read all the tax laws and interpretation bulletins and mold his life to that. He was one of the first people that was working from home. He had his printer in a different room than where he had his office so that he could claim more square footage as the home office. He was that kind of guy. And he wasn't an accountant or anything. He was an IT guy. He just read lots. One day, the three of us went down to the beach to smoke cigars. In parks, you're not allowed to smoke, but we grabbed our chairs and went anyway. The tide was low, so we went down just past the rocks where the sand started and smoked away. That's where I heard this story. So remember, Einstein told a story about if he had 1 hour to solve a problem to save his life, he would think of the proper question for 58 minutes. Well, Jim's one of those kinds of guys that ask questions that we don't think about. He looked around the park because he was busted one time, and he asked himself this question. I can see the property line where the road is. I can see the property line where there's a house next door, and he can see the property line where there was a hotel next. But where is the property line when you're looking out at the ocean? He did his homework, and he found out that while the city owned the foreshore, it was DFO that owned the ocean from the high tide line down. That is Crown land, and they don't have a prohibition for smoking on the ocean. That is where we had our chairs the day he told me the story. So he lives in a retirement city with lots of old ladies who have their morning walks at the same time he has his morning cigar. That's how he got busted in the first place, but he was ready after he did his research. He used that printer that was in the other room, and he printed out the laws. He also made a phone call to one of his cigar buddies who was a lawyer who knew a lawyer that did property stuff. I'm not talking about real estate transactions when you buy a house. I'm talking about property rights, air rights, things like that. A lot higher up in the food chain. Top floor corner office kind of guy. So depending on the cigar, you're looking at 45 minutes to smoke a Robusto to an hour and a half for a Churchill or anything bigger than that. Soon thereafter the Karens came by complaining about him smoking in the park, even though he was in the ocean. This was even years before anyone was called Karen. So the Karens started bugging him and threatened to call police or bylaw, and he told them to go ahead. He just started his cigar, so he had plenty of time. He sent a message to his lawyer friend of a friend to give him a heads up he might be calling later. No problem. Well, the Karens didn't just call bylaw, they called the police. So Jim continued smoking a cigar while he handed over the printout regarding foreshore ownership. It's not the fault of the police because they're used to speeding and stuff like that, but they didn't know this law. Bylaw comes by and pretty much the same, so he gets on his phone, shows them the lawyer's website, and makes the call. Meanwhile, the cops and bylaw are phoning their supervisors about this as well. Of course, the Karens are not happy, so they start complaining about secondhand smoke, but they don't have any legal basis. Jim talks to the property rights lawyer on speakerphone, and he says for the police and bylaw supervisors to give him a shout, and he will enlighten them about where park property begins and ends. And of course, the best part of the story is that we were smoking a 10-year-old Punch Churchill when he told me the story. So the epilogue is that whenever he's smoking at low tide and bylaw comes by, not just for him, but for dogs and drinking and other stuff like that, they always shake their head and wave. They told him they've had complaints about him smoking in the park, and they now ask where the guy is, in the park or down on the sand. Because the sand isn't really the park, it's the ocean. So I just wanted to do a quick edit for a bunch of reasons. As far as the printer and taxes go, I don't know the whole story. What I do know is that he was subsection 6, and not only did he discover the law that said below high tide was not the park, but he also read a lot of the interpretation bulletins from the tax authority. He wouldn't commit any tax fraud. He would use the rules to the full extent. Unfortunately, I can't confirm what happened. I do know at this point he hasn't been audited. Sometimes in your life you meet someone and you just go, wow. Jim was that guy. There's a lot of things he didn't have in his life, like a wife and kids, but he lived his life like a how-to textbook. Everything was well thought out and structured. He was gregarious and kind and giving. That's all I'm going to say. Story 6. Hey there. Over the last few months, I've had quite a few entitled parents approach me and my friends whilst we are hanging out at the local park. Keep in mind, we are all 14, so it isn't wrong for us to sit and chat on the swings. So here we go. Story. My first entitled parent encounter. How interesting. So this happened about 5 months back. Me and my friends were getting on a large swing they have in the park. Not the most suitable playground equipment for little kids. Now remember that my friends aren't the thinnest, but they aren't fat. Cast is the entitled parent, their friend, entitled kid, nice lady, nice kid, friend 1, friend 2 and me. Okay, on with the story. The entitled parent, the friend, and the entitled kid approached me and my friend when we just got on the swing. Me, friend 1, and friend 2 were having conversation. Entitled parent, hey, could my kid use this swing? Friend 2, sorry, we only just got on here. He can go on in a bit if he wants to. But the playground is for kids. Friend 1, we are kids. Look, I don't have time for this. My kid wants to go on, so get off. Me, I'm sorry, but as we already said, we just got on here. The entitled parent looks at me, then looks my friends up and down. Maybe you could go on the exercise equipment or something. To tell you, I was in shock. This lady came up to us, and when we said no, she had the audacity to fat shame my friends. Friend 2, look, we're already on here, so no, we aren't getting off, and we're not going on the exercise equipment. The entitled trio stormed off over to the other side of the playground. I watched as the entitled parent and her friends started whining about us and staring us down, and then the holy opportunity came up to get our own back. This other lady approached us. Nice lady. Hey, I just saw what happened there, and that lady was being really rude. But can my kid go on the swing, please? He is really excited to be at the park. Friend 2. Yeah, your kid can go on because you're actually really nice. When I looked over at the entitled parent, she looked pissed off, but definitely worth it. Then my friends and I decided to go shopping to avoid confrontation with her.